us tonight. This is the first of 6 public outreach meetings that will be held as part of the Binghamton Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. Tonight's meeting is for local faith organizations, and the purpose is to solicit input from members of the local faith community regarding improvements or reforms to the Binghamton Police Department. As I said, and for those of you who don't know me, my name is Megan Brockett, and I work in Mayor Rich David's office as Assistant for Neighborhood and Youth Affairs. I'll be serving as the moderator for tonight's meeting. As a member of the Collaborative Steering Committee, my role tonight is limited to ensuring that everyone who has registered to speak at this meeting has an opportunity to do so. Tonight is about hearing from you on ways the police department can better serve the city's diverse community, improve public safety, implement 21st century policing strategies, strengthen relationships, and address the disparities that affect communities of color. Your input is necessary to reach these goals as outlined in Governor Cuomo's executive order. To provide a little context to those of you who may not be familiar, the city has selected the Finn Institute for Public Safety to serve as an independent research partner in this effort. They are charged with collecting and tracking public input and themes that are shared during these outreach meetings and surveying stakeholders for additional input. They will be reviewing a video copy of tonight's meeting. For members of the public that are watching tonight, I first want to thank you for your interest in this and to remind you about the upcoming opportunities for public input. As I said, tonight's meeting with local faith leaders is one of 6 planned outreach meetings, and that includes an open public comment meeting on February 18th at 6:30 p.m. You can find the full meeting schedule on the Collaboratives page of the City of Binghamton website. For those who wish to provide comment during any one of these upcoming meetings, please email the Collaborative to register at bpdcollaborative@cityofbinghamton.com. Community members are also welcome to submit written comments through that same email address. And again, that's bpdcollaborative@cityofbinghamton.com. For tonight, we will hear directly from members of the local faith community. More than 15 of you have signed up to participate in this meeting. And on behalf of the steering committee, I want to thank you for taking the time to make your voice heard on this topic. As leaders of local faith organizations, you are all often the first ones that community members turn to for guidance, consolation, or a listening ear. You are also so often a voice for people who feel they are without one in our community. Your participation is so important tonight, and we appreciate you being here. So in order to make sure everyone has a chance to speak, I'll make my way through the list of participants, turning the floor over to each of you one by one for up to 5 minutes. When your name is called, please wait for us to unmute you or unmute yourself, and then introduce yourself. Tell us which faith organization you're with, what your role is there, and whatever you would like to share as part of the record for this meeting. We want to hear your experiences, thoughts, concerns, ideas for improving policing in our community. This is a listening session, not a Q&A or panel discussion. After this meeting, the steering committee may wish to follow up with you for additional input or questions. We have all of your email addresses to be able to do that. And again, all of this information is part of the community input record that will be included in the Finn Institute's compilation of public comment. So I'll be moving down the list in order of participants based on when people registered. Our first up on that list is Reverend Dr. Joe Selepak of the Broome County Council of Churches. Reverend Selepak, the floor is yours for 5 minutes here.
Well, thank you. I wasn't really all that prepared to speak. Outside of the fact that, you know, I've had a long standing relationship with a lot of the churches that have African-American as well as Hispanic and other folks. And I can say from my perspective, at least, not perhaps on behalf of the entire Council of Churches, but there seems to be, and I don't know if this is going to be answered by policing as much as like a general consensus that even security and other kinds of things tend to be higher around people of color than around people like me. And so, you know, and I know that that sometimes the sentencing that kind of gets handed down through our jail ministry tends to be more severe for people who are people of color than for others. And so I'm just, you know, I'm interested in understanding the breadth of the problem, as well as trying to figure out ways in which the community input can be solicited in order to improve policing. I believe in a community panel, and I think that there needs to be some type of accountability to the community itself. And so anyway, I'm interested, and that's my comment, I guess.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. I appreciate that. The next on our list is Carmen St. Hilaire from Salvation Temple Church. I didn't see Carmen sign on. Is she here with us tonight?
I don't believe that she is signed on at this point.
Okay. How about Pastor Frank Barnett, House of Worship? Has he joined us yet?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, he may not be able to join us tonight. He had an emergency that he had to take care of.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Williams. I'll mark that. How about Reverend Patricia, is it Raub from Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott?
Yes, Rob.
Rob, great. Thank you, Reverend Rob. I will start the timer here and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to read my statement for the most part. I've lived in Binghamton since 1990, and I've worked in the Southern Tier as a religious educator and or pastor since 1995. Because I'm frequently in the downtown Binghamton area, I've had many opportunities to observe the Binghamton Police Department in action. In particular, I'd like to mention 3 instances in which the BPD responded to calls for people in mental health crises, 2 of which involved people with suicidal ideations. I will add at this point that none of these were people of color. These were all white individuals. In each of these encounters with members of the public, I observed the Binghamton police behave with sensitivity and clearly with the benefit of effective training. Usually one police officer would take the lead, speaking calmly and gently to the distressed person. Often there would be a time of negotiation. The person did not want to go to the emergency room for mental health evaluation or did not want the assistance of the police in general. The officers showed patience, restraint, and calm in these situations. In each case, the officers involved eventually gained the trust of the person and were then able to provide them with the help they needed. When I read this week of the situation in Rochester, in which police doused a distraught 9-year-old girl with pepper spray, I thought, that didn't have to happen. The BPD would have known how to handle that situation, and I like to think they would have handled it the same way they handled the ones I witnessed. It's with this knowledge that I can say with confidence, all of our police departments everywhere can do better than we are seeing in the constant barrage of news of senseless, violent incidents with people of color. They can do better, and I believe this is true of the Binghamton Police Department as well. They can do better by committing to transparency with the public regarding their encounters with all citizens, including revealing the ratio of stops of people of color to white citizens. They can do better with the formation of a civilian review board, which can evaluate incidents with the clear goal of public safety at the forefront rather than the goal of protecting officers at all costs. And they can do better with better training, including implicit bias training, cultural diversity training, and anti-racism training. I have seen BP do better than other jurisdictions in their interactions with people in mental health crises, and I have faith that they can do better in their interactions with people of color as well. Thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Pastor, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that and taking the time to be with us tonight. Next on our list for public comment, Reverend Kimberly Chastain, pastor of United Presbyterian Church of Binghamton.
Hi, I've been in Binghamton for 7 years. I came as the pastor of Binghamton United Presbyterian Church, which is located at 42 Shenango Street in downtown Binghamton, catty corner across Henry Street from the bus station. The congregation is committed to building up the local community, to reaching out to those who are on the margins of our city, and to providing a safe place for community organization and their visions to grow. About 18 different community groups and organizations use our building regularly. We serve about 200 people every Tuesday night at our community meal. And until the pandemic, our lobby and our library were open every day for people who were hungry and cold to come in for a hot drink and a chance to gather with others. And with those experiences, I have two separate but equal impressions of the Binghamton Police Department. In their dealings with me as the pastor of United Presbyterian Church, they have always been uniformly prompt when we've called for help, consistent in patrolling our area, kind and courteous when taking statements or following up on a call. On the other hand, when they've been called to a scene at the church, they've singled out, every time they've come, they've singled out and confronted one of the large Black men that work on our building staff, identifying without inquiry that they are the source of the problem. And they've approached them in defensive postures as if prepared for aggression. On every occasion, the source of the problem was a white person, and on at least one occasion, that person was allowed to slip out while the officer was asking the Black staff member for identification. So a first priority in my thinking is that racial profiling must be eradicated, not just by racial awareness and diversity training, but by creating specific penalties for race-based profiling, bullying, harassment, and arrests. These can only be enforced with greater transparency in reporting and by tracking and reporting trends in police encounters. We also need greater diversity in our police department. The demographics of the department should at the very least reflect the demographics of our community. Binghamton United works to integrate citizens returning from incarceration into the community, funding caseworkers, working with the STAP Employment Readiness Program, and employing people with convictions and/or addiction issues on our staff. And the disruption in lives that we see when people are arrested and jailed for non-criminal problems, like mental health issues, addiction, and homelessness, has convinced me that we need to stop criminalizing these challenges and start training and employing crisis workers to deal with those issues. For example, you could retrain the last 12 officers hired to deal with those things and deploy them in crisis intervention without body armor or weapons, with the goal of getting people stabilized in the community. We need to prioritize affordable housing and stop rewarding developers who are creating student housing and luxury housing. Shifting funds to the creation of needed housing from Humvees and military gear for Binghamton Police Department should be a priority. There is an abundance of research that supports housing first as a solution to poverty. None of these ideas are new. They were taught as best practices in my first class in criminal justice almost 40 years ago. But it is past time to implement them here in Binghamton and across New York State. I came to Binghamton because it's an exciting place to live with a vibrant art scene, its own opera and symphony, great restaurants from a whole variety of cultural backgrounds. It's a beautiful city with a proud history, but there is work to be done in rethinking how we understand the role of the police and their relationship to the community so that the cultural diversity that exists can flourish and enrich our life together. Thank you.
Reverend Chastain, thank you for sharing that and for making time tonight to be here. Next on our list of participants, Pastor Dave Pyatt with Hollerton and Conklin Forks UMCs. Pastor Pyatt, are you here tonight?
I am.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I likewise was not prepared to speak. I represent myself, but also my wife, Jenny, who is a pastor up at Nimmonsburg on the north side of the city. We have been here, living here in the town of Binghamton for about 4.5 years now. So we're still fairly new to the area. although we do very much enjoy the city and have occasioned encounters with law enforcement, though very rare. I'm here to become more informed. I appreciate what those of you who've gone before me have already shared. Those are important issues, and we do need to look at them. I'm interested in all of this partly because I'm a trained law enforcement chaplain as well as a pastor. So I know that as much as the general population out there needs to have available to them good spiritual care, I know that the law enforcement also needs that, whether they know that or accept that or not. So I'm here to listen and to become more informed as to the specific issues that our city department is experiencing.
Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate that and you being here tonight. Up next, we have Reverend Robert Peak, First Presbyterian Church of Johnson City. Reverend Peak.
Oh, good evening. I am the pastor, as they said, First Presbyterian Church of Johnson City. I am on the fringes of the city. The line literally runs through the church. So that's why we're called the First Presbyterian Church Johnson City. But we are on, our legal address is 4 Floral Avenue, Binghamton. My interaction with the police force over the last 30 years has been varied and mostly positive. Whenever we've needed them, when they finally find us, sometimes that's not their fault. It's just the way the system works. They have been prompt and have stepped in to deal with whatever the issues were, and they have been varied over the last 30 years. I have watched our community evolve and change over the last 30 years, I think to the better, as I have watched it become more diverse. One of the things that I've noticed through our outreach program mostly than just our regular daily activities as a church has been not so much as I've seen the officers particularly pick a group of people, specifically just people of color, but also low income folks, homeless folks are all sometimes treated differently. And I notice it's a difference between the younger officers and the older officers. The overall older officers obviously are more seasoned and are just wonderful in their diplomacy and work with individuals. Sometimes the younger officers have a little less patience and can be sharper in their language or tone at times. I'm not sure if that's intentional. It's the way it comes out sometimes. But I don't think that they're trying to in any way be intimidating or mean to the group. I think it's just the way it comes out. And so my opinion of the Binghamton Police Department is that they have done a stellar job in trying to be attentive to the needs of the community. Is it perfect? No. Is there going to be a quick fix? No. Do we have to be aware of the diversity of people that are in our community and understand how to address that diversity and where that diversity comes from? Yes. Is that something that can be taught in a classroom? Maybe to some degree. It certainly will be taught by the more seasoned people than someone younger. I don't know what the mentorship or when an officer comes into the force, how they are prepared for what they're going to meet, how long they may travel with another more experienced officer. I don't know that part, and maybe that needs to be extended. I'm not sure. That might require more police officers. I don't have those kind of answers, but I do think that they do a great job overall. I think that there are occasions when they slip over the boundaries and maybe in an appropriate way of their language or their actions treat people differently, and that I think can be corrected. I have a lot of hope in this city and a lot of belief in this city and what it can do. So thank you for tonight.
Thank you, Reverend Peak, for sharing that and for your time tonight. Next on our list is Father Jim Dutko from St. Mike's. Is Father Dutko here tonight?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I'm here with my dog, Maggie. Maggie May is part of the Homeland Security Canine Corps protecting America against terrorism. So she helps me in the first ward over there, take care of business. I've been in the ward for 30 years. And I remember when I moved to Binghamton, I noticed across the street was Mr. Rogers Trucking. So I go over and see Ron Rogers. I'd start singing this song. It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. Want to be my neighbor. And we'd laugh a lot about it. But I've seen the neighborhood change over 30 years. I've been here a long time. And all different kind of population moved into where the old timers used to be, a lot of Slavic people, whatever, in the first ward. What I've discovered is that people who've moved there were just as poor as the people lived there before. And by and large, everybody who pretty much that I know wants the place to be good and safe. And they care about their kids and they care about Wilson School and the neighborhood. And it's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. I think about it. It's not a joke. I'm serious about it. It is a beautiful place. And I'm grateful to the Binghamton Police Department. I often walk the dog in the parking lot over there. And I often see squad cars that are sitting back there. And I always make a point of going over and saying, hey, how you doing? Knock on the window and they'll talk to me about my dog. And I always thank them for sitting on the parking lot because I'm aware of the fact that most of these people, men and women, a lot of them are young. A lot of them not been in service very long. Some of you have been in the military, aware of the fact if you're in the military, you wear a target on your back for a year or 2 years, whatever you do, and you serve, and then you go home, and that's, you don't worry about it. But these folks are in a real tough position because every day in their lives, they put a target on their back. I just had a funeral for a former police chief in Binghamton who died at the age of 96. And I was thinking about his life, and he came out of the service and joined the Binghamton Department, rose from patrolman to chief of police. And I thought to myself, talking to his wife, I said, the guy had a target on his back all of his life. Every day he'd go to work, you never know what's going to happen. And so they're really under a lot of stress. And so I'm grateful because I am aware of the fact they have a tough job. And they have to deal with tough characters. Not everybody is a wonderful person in the neighborhood. And so it's a real, real problem. I remember back in 2009, the Council of Churches set up a wonderful program for clergy, tied with Father Lord and some other folks who are involved with the police department, to be emergency responders to crisis. Well, I must tell you, I never expected to be any real crisis going on in Binghamton, but a couple weeks after we got involved in this thing, we had this shooting at the American Civic Center. And a lot of us who were involved in that ended up over there talking to people from all strata of life, all different religions, all traditions, and all were in the same boat because people who had been really in trauma, and a number of people died, as you know, and families were in crisis. And it seemed to me that it might be a good idea if we had a little more clergy involvement with helping police do things. You know, there's something about collar power. You know, people be respectful because you're clergy, but sometimes your people, they sort of like back off a little bit and they're more willing to be open to possibilities. So I think there's ways that we can help as clergy policing the situation. Obviously, sometimes things go amiss. Sometimes people really mess up. I am aware of the fact, but you know, the problem is everybody gets targeted with the same brush and it's not fair, just as we have to be careful in how we deal with everyone. So all I guess I want to say is that I'm grateful to the department. They've been good to me. They've been good to the people I work with. I have empathy for the people who are walking around wearing a shield, knowing that they've got a target on their back. And sometimes it's a real tough job. And so we got to work together. And I know the community needs improvement in everything. We're not walking on water here. None of us are doing that, but we can make it better. And I'm really proud of folks who serve in all kinds of ways. So anyway, that's what I think.
Thank you, Father Dutko. Thanks for sharing and for your time here with us tonight. Next on our participant list is Reverend Glenn Mahaffey, Trinity Memorial Episcopal Church in Binghamton. Reverend, are you here with us tonight?
I'm right here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. I really would like to just listen to what a lot of people have to say. We've had we've had a good number of interactions with the Binghamton Police Department in a whole range of situations at Trinity Memorial. And it just reinforces to me the need for community partnership with law enforcement. I mean, you know, they can't do their job without us. And we all have to have relationships with each other that need to be respectful. And I've heard someone talk about a need for a civilian review board. That makes perfect sense to me. The importance of being racially representative of the community, that just seems to be a no-brainer. And I think the other piece of it is one of the things that Binghamton High School is doing is they're really working with some restorative justice models. And I think those models could be very, very helpful in some of the situations that the police department finds themselves in, and even as they go forward into the judicial issues. So, you know, I'd be I would really like to see some of those kind of things come to the fore too. So I'll give somebody else a chance to speak now, and I'll listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Next up on our list is Reverend Kelly Wolford, pastor of Trinity AME Zion Church in Binghamton. Reverend?
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity. I am, I guess, the newest one. I'm only here a year and a half, pastoring at Trinity AME Zion Church, and loving it. Also, but before that, I was in Poughkeepsie. But this is a different culture, and I'm really trying to understand. And like many have said, I didn't come prepared tonight to submit a comment, but I do agree with a lot that Reverend Patricia said. It was really, really heartfelt. A lot what Reverend Kimberly said, very heartfelt. And I totally think that some of the members that I speak to, their concern now mainly is the addressing the unrest. Addressing the unrest and how do we deal with the unrest? And some questions that are posed to me that I would love to answer, that's why I want to be involved, is what is going on and what is happening? What is going to happen? Answers that I can't give them. Answers that I wish that we can come up with. So that's why I thank God for this panel and this forum, so we can kind of digest this and understand that there are others out in the community that have concerns about their children, their sons, especially sons of color. And that is the biggest cry that I hear coming from my members, is the fear for their sons. Are they coming home? So the more that we can address this and come up with some answers, I think the better we will be equipped to assure them. As most pastors, you might kick me off the board at this point. Most pastors know that everything you can't cover in the Bible. Some things are realistic. Some answers have to be realistic. So I seek that. I seek that for our congregation, for my congregation and the community in large.
Reverend, thank you. Thanks so much for sharing and for also taking the time to be here with us tonight. Next up on our participant list is Malika Muhammad with the Islamic Awareness Center in Binghamton. Ms. Muhammad, are you here with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you.
As she stated, my name is Malika Muhammad, and I am affiliated with the Islamic Awareness Center. My responsibility there is the Human Service Coordinator. So what that means is if anyone has issues that deal with human services, I am the go-to person. Okay, I moved to Binghamton in 1998 with my 10 children. Okay, 5 of them males, 5 of them females. In 1999, I started working with the Binghamton Police Department as a crossing guard. I knew, Dan Carell. I associated with these individuals. I brought my children here to be safe and have a better life. However, that didn't always manifest itself. Okay, I have, like I said, 5 sons, and I have a daughter who may not be recognized as a female. Okay, however, they've been abused by the Binghamton Police Department, especially by that high school. Okay, They know just because they don't go to the school, they know people that do, and they've been abused. I mean, my daughter was arrested for talking to a friend in front of the high school after school was out, taken to the precinct, handcuffed to a pole in there, but never charged with anything. After some time, she was let go. Okay. Muslim women have had situations where the police come and they don't have the awareness of how to deal with a Muslim female. If there's a male officer there, this woman is not going to feel comfortable communicating with him. So there should be more females on the force, as far as diversity is concerned. I don't ever think you're going to get more people of color, and that's just my opinion, because there's too many issues. However, as whenever there's a crisis, a world crisis, the Muslims are the first person that's looked at. If there's a bombing, it's like, oh, who did it? Who did it? And there's they don't have the awareness of what it is to deal with people of different religious persuasions. And it saddens me that we are here trying to make a difference, but who knows what to do? As far as the police, do they have any knowledge of how to deal with a Muslim female? Do they understand that Muslim women don't want to be touched by a male, even if she's being arrested? They could bring a female to the scene. I'm gonna be honest with you, and this is from my heart. I'm not going to say that all the officers have issues. I'm not going to say that. Some of them are very kind. They are, especially the older ones like Dan Carell and Herbie. I know all of them. Okay. And they were nice, kind people. But then you have these young ones that come up, and I can remember an incident where I had to deal with the police and they were rude to me, and they didn't change their attitude until I said, oh yeah, I'll let my boss, Dan Carell, know how you spoke to me. Oh, then we got a different attitude. So there is a need to correct the issues with people of color, people of different religious backgrounds. There's a need. And we need to also show that we are doing something as far as the police are concerned. Stop hiding whatever it is that you're hiding. Stop hiding it. Let the people know how many traffic stops. It's a shame that my daughter gets pulled over. For what? And then she's told that, during a pandemic, the officers don't have a mask on. And she's told that she's being rude because she don't want to roll down her window all the way because she knows she didn't do anything wrong. But this is what goes on, and it's ridiculous. We have to make changes. I should not be afraid for my children. I shouldn't be afraid. This is ridiculous. And that's basically, all that I need to say. Like I said in my opening, when I sent the email, I was in the park. I was one of those people that said, yes, we need more money used toward mental health counseling. We need more money toward putting it so that the kids in Binghamton can have internet. I mean, I work at a school. It's horrible that these children can't do their schoolwork because they can't afford Spectrum cable. But we have a lot of money to hire police officers, and I'm going to end there.
Ms. Muhammad, thank you for sharing and for making time to be here with us tonight. We appreciate it. Next on our participant list is Rabbi Barbara Goldman-Martell from Temple Concord in Binghamton.
Rabbi Barbara is not able to make it tonight, and she did send in her thoughts. presume that you've received them.
Yes, we did. Thank you. Did you want to speak on her behalf or just have?
I'm just listening.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, next then is Reverend Douglas Taylor with Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Binghamton.
Thank you. I have been serving the Unitarian Universalist congregation here for closing in on 20 years, maybe 17 or 18. Unitarian Universalism in general, and my congregation in particular, is predominantly white. We've had a Black Lives Matter banner out on our front wall for a while. We're in renovations right now, so it's not up, but when we get back in our building, we're going to be putting it back up. This is something that the members of my congregation and I have been paying attention to and really want to be part of moving things into a more progressive manner. I'm very much in support of the various initiatives that have been proposed of bringing more social workers on, getting things less militarized, having better training toward interventions so that it doesn't lead to excessive violence. I want to use my time, though, not to speak of a specific initiative, but to instead offer an analogy. I came into ministry at the turn of the century, and at that time there was a dramatic amount of mistrust for clergy due to the very public conversations that were going on about clergy sexual abuse. And I came into a profession that was not trusted. Our work was to help vulnerable people, to offer healing, to be present for folks who were suffering. And what the public had in their perception is that people, instead of getting healing, were receiving abuse. And I'm a nice guy. I'm a perfectly normal person. I have a regular sexuality and it's not predatory, but that's irrelevant. I had to function in a system that had that stain in it of clergy being seen as sexual predators. It didn't matter that I'm nice. It didn't matter that I'm married. It didn't matter that I'm any of that. So here we are in a situation where the police are not trusted because of the prevalence of news about their abuses. People have been coming to the police for protection because they're vulnerable and they have been receiving harm. And it doesn't matter if this police officer or that police officer is a good person. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. The system needs to respond to the perception that's out there, the reality that's out there, that people have been harmed. And there's a lack of trust now. It's hard work to step back and say, this isn't about me. This is about my profession. And I spent a lot of my young ministry taking classes on professional ethics and talking with my congregation about how I need to be held accountable. And if somebody, has a bad experience, we need to talk that through. We need to figure it out. And I'm not untouchable. For me to have a real ministry, I need to be accountable and I need to be transparent. For our police officers to really serve our public, they need to acknowledge that it's not about them. It's about the reality that's out there now that people are seeing, that the people come to the police for protection, and too many of them have been receiving harm instead. It's a culture change that we need to step into. And it's hard, but it's worth it. And those are my comments. Blessings upon you all. Thank you.
Reverend Taylor, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here and making time for this tonight. Next on our participant list is Reverend Elizabeth Ewing with Christ Episcopal Church here in Binghamton.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for holding this forum. I'm very happy to be here. Christ Episcopal Church is in downtown Binghamton, kind of near the Lost Dog Boscov's area. We are a racially and economically mixed congregation. And we also, have a whole range of people who drop in. And so right now I'm going to say, simply put, we believe it's critical for law enforcement organizations in our community to continue working to build a constructive relationship with all elements in the community. It's vital for the Binghamton Police Department to devote energy, intelligence, and sympathy to the task of getting fully acquainted with the community it serves. Success will require a sustained commitment to training in de-escalation of conflict, the development of procedures for understanding and hearing community concerns, particularly regarding bias against people of color. Equally critical is the provision of transparency and accountability when it comes to the handling of complaints, when it comes to simply knowing what our police department is about. We hope there will also be full support for effective efforts to improve mental health services. But as Reverend Pat said, as a community of faith, we know how deeply committed the police are to making some progress. And I want to thank the Binghamton Police for assistance at Christ Church. In the summer of 2020, a man in a state of confusion and distress arrived at the church. He had no place to go and felt he had been evicted. When the police officer arrived, she clearly knew how to respond to someone who was in a difficult mental state. The problem was quickly and thoughtfully resolved. And this happened again with someone who was more violently in a difficult mental health state. But clearly there has been some training in mental health issues and dealing with it. And I hope this shall continue and expand. And secondly, I'm very concerned about instances when observers might reasonably believe the Binghamton Police were operating through a lens of racial profiling, including a case in my neighborhood of a child who was 12 and Black. And this instance of my own personal experience of walking around with our youth, most of whom are Black, many of whom attend Binghamton High School, and joining them around the city, and of my own children who are mixed but are also seen as Black and have felt great anxiety. And so it resonates with me, the fear of your son, even if he's an adult son, a young adult son, and the fear that my husband even said, don't even mention to the police tonight that you have a son, because now they're probably going to go and target him. So I throw that out there to you. The fear and the anxiety is very, very real. And Black people do not live in just one place in Binghamton. They live all over. So if you see Black, and blessedly more and more Black people are moving into my neighborhood, but they're everywhere, just like everybody. Range, we are all a range, economically and in many other ways. So in this regard, I support creation of programs and procedures which deal with anti-racism and inherent bias, and which work to counter harsher treatment for citizens of color by our Binghamton Police. And then we at Christ Church stand ready to assist as appropriate. And third, I believe it's important to commend that the Binghamton Police Force is made up of citizens of the community. They're not some separate thing. They are also citizens in our community. We are all citizens together and called to work together. And as citizens, we also all seek transparency in police operations and accountability for police action, as we would seek for all public servants. The welfare and safety of people in downtown Binghamton are important, and we want to work together to support the community and the police officers who faithfully serve Binghamton. And we encourage the police force, the city of Binghamton, to provide officers with adequate and appropriate training in crisis response and nonviolent intervention, to train officers and their leaders in anti-racism practices and hold them accountable for any violent or racist actions. And let me close by reiterating our keen interest as a church and as a grouping of residents in this community to working with the Binghamton Police to help strengthen police community relationships. We appreciate police commitment to upholding public safety, and we wish to assure that no citizen is or feels unsafe with the police due to racial bias, mental health or addictions issues, or poverty. And we seek and support policies overall that help the police uphold public safety by expanding access to mental health services, strengthening our schools, reducing gun violence, and alleviating poverty. Thank you again for allowing me this opportunity to testify. Thank you for having this forum.
Reverend Ewing, thank you so much, both for your input and for making time to be here with us tonight. We appreciate it. I saw Carmen from Salvation Temple Church signed on. Carmen, if you're still here with us, did you want an opportunity to comment? I think you're muted, Carmen. Okay.
I've been listening to everything that has been going on. I agree that there has to be change and training with the police officers, because as for my son, I'm scared for him every time he leaves the door. It's almost like he has a bullseye on his back, and he has been harassed several times by the police officers, even when he was in high school at Binghamton High School. And I'm scared because of everything that goes on and everything, and he's scared and he's going to react if the police come to him. It seems like they don't have no sensitivity training of what's going on. They're targeting certain minorities or the way they look, and most of the time that he's always harassed is when he's leaving from work, just because of what he drives or what color he might wear. And it just needs to be a more diverse police officers for Binghamton. And I feel that it has, since the 90s, it has gotten a little bit better, but we're still backwards. It's just still backwards. And I just think it just needs to be more training and diversity training. And I think as religious leaders, we need some diversity training as well, because when I first got here, there were barely any minorities here. And it seems like they're scared, and the police are scared because they don't know how to handle us. And that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Carmen, for your input and for joining us tonight. We appreciate you being here. I see that we have Reverend Becky and Kay Drebert with us tonight. Reverends, did you want an opportunity to comment? Or are you just here listening?
Basically listening, but I think I hear some general themes. I'm the deacon at Christ Episcopal Church. I work along with Elizabeth, but I'm also a licensed social worker, and I primarily work with people with addictions. So I can't stress enough to have the proper training to handle people with mental health issues and who are in the midst of an active addiction. Many of the clients I have worked with have told me stories about name calling and stigmatization, and I believe this is something that needs to stop. I don't believe this is everybody, and I think it's a challenge in the general population as well, but this is something that I think needs more attention and training in our police force. Otherwise, I do think that doing a review panel and doing more work around including social workers and de-escalating would be a better way to spend our limited funds than the militarization of the police force.
And I'm Becky Drebert. I am the priest at St. Peter's Church in Bainbridge. so it's in Shenango County, not, we do live
We
in,
live here.
in Binghamton. And I have been on the Police Reform Commission for Bainbridge, which is a very tiny village. There are only 3 police there at all. But it's been a very fascinating process to talk about these different aspects of policing, including procedural justice, which is about basically community policing. It's about recognizing the dignity of every person, respecting them, letting them tell their stories, even though they may not want to be heard, including the victims and the perpetrators, and transparency and all that's going on, and also that sense of integrity that the police have, that they are going to treat everyone fairly. To me, that was one of the biggest areas that we had that was useful. Some of the things we've recommended, even in the small department, that there be a citizen review commission, both to deal with any complaints, but also to help highlight some areas that might be problematic for the police to deal with. So again, it's been a very intriguing process. I certainly wish the city of Binghamton great success in following that process and also keeping an open mind to what that might mean. Again, we value our police very highly, but we also recognize that there are those times when police are not held accountable as they should be, whether that's because of union issues or because of that sort of us versus them, and maintaining a sort of protective bubble around the police. Those things need to be looked at as well. So thank you for the time to say something.
Thank you.
Reverends, thank you for being here and both for sharing tonight. We appreciate your time. We also have here with us tonight members of the Collaborative Steering Committee. We're fortunate that 2 of those steering committee members are also members of the local faith organizations, the local faith community, and I want to make sure that they have opportunities to share tonight if they're interested as well. So here with us, steering committee members are Reverend Mario Williams from River of Life Ministries and also Reverend Henry Osby from Hand of Hope. And I just, Reverend Williams, maybe we'll start with you if you're interested in sharing tonight.
Good evening, Megan, and good evening, Jared, and to all the colleagues in the gospel. I'm Reverend Mario Williams, Bishop of the River of Life Ministries here in Binghamton, New York. We're located at 438 Shenango Street. It's our new location of worship. And I'm glad to be a part of this steering committee. I'm glad to be a part of this community event. I just wanted to say a few things. 20 years ago, we came here to Binghamton. Binghamton was known as one of the safest cities in New York State, and also was a good place to get a good education for our children. I came here as a worker for the state of New York at the Greater Binghamton Health Center, and then we had a church here we've been in ministry for 20 years here, and it's so good to see so many of my colleagues on this panel and on this forum. We've worked together in times past, going into the mayor's office and raising some of these issues and questions to the mayor's office about cultural diversity training. I don't want to sound redundant, but a lot of things that come to my mind and heart is the trust. How can the Binghamton Police Department rebuild the trust back in the community? We see in light of all the things that happen on the national level, doesn't mean that it's really taking place down here at the local level. For the most part, I think the Binghamton Police Department has done a tremendous job. We have seen change in our community. We have seen change in our police force. One of the things that I miss is really not knowing the members that are of the police department. A thing that I think that we need to have some kind of education to the community about the process of hiring, from taking the civil service test to hiring individuals to the police force. We've spoken about trying to get more minorities and people of color and women on the police force, which I believe that they had moved into that direction. We talked about enforcement and accountability. We have a lot of good policies and guidelines and stuff in place. And as we all know, it's inevitable for change to take place in light of all the things that are happening in our world and our society. So I'm glad to be a part of this steering committee because we want to see change as well for the betterment for everyone. Been a man of color, amen, hallelujah. If time would allow, I tell you a lot about myself, but it speaks volume to this community. We're very diverse, you know, and I think that there are some issues. The faith-based organizations, we are the heartbeat of the community. We are the ears and the heart of the people that are in our community, and all of us have great concern and passion about how we can make Binghamton a safer and better place. One of the things that I would look for in this meeting is as we're sitting around having dialogue that we're talking about these things and these issues and concerns. We initiated going into the mayor's office and talking about some of the issues and concerns that we had. We didn't want to be a knee jerk. We're responding now because we're mandated by the governor's office or what happened on the national level. We wanted to make sure that our voices were being heard and make sure that training was taking place, education, accountability, and enforcement. I don't want to be back another 5 years from now talking about the same issues when we have in place some guidelines, policies and procedures and guidelines to address these concerns and these issues. So we just need to make sure they're being enforced. I just want to thank everyone for being a part of the solution. You know, there's many issues that we've come a long ways, but there's a long ways to go, as we all are aware. And I want to thank you all for, I hope we can identify what the needs are and then move forward with getting some kind of changes and reforms for the benefit for everybody. Thank you so much for having me be a part of this committee. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Bishop Williams, and thank you too for your work and then the time that you've committed to being a member of the steering committee. It's appreciated. Reverend Osby, would you like an opportunity to comment tonight?
Sure. I'd like to say a few things. First of all, I want to say thank you to the city and to all of the clergy who have participated. It's been just great just listening to all the different comments, and it's been great help to me and to see all the people who have participated. I'm thankful for the privilege of just being here to participate myself and to have this part in this police reform and reinvestment proposal that we're putting together. I agree with many of the things that I've already heard. I mean, you've talked about getting more clergy involved in police calls, de-escalation training, even a community review board. I think there should be also a periodic report card also, where we get to learn what has happened in the last year or so. The arrests, the shootings, you know, all the way up to whatever it was, helping a little old lady across the street or whatever. We need a report on these things, and it needs to be periodic. But my biggest concern is that all the marching and the protests that precipitated this committee, they must not have, they can't be in vain. Even the many years of fighting for civil rights and equality by the civil rights leaders and, you know, Dr. King, Rosa Parks, and all the others to change the laws in our country, that can't be in vain. But as we're seeing in so many cities across the country, these laws, they don't mean anything if the people, the police departments, whom we pay with money out of our pockets, if they don't properly enforce these laws. And that's the issue here that I think. I am not in favor of defunding the police department, but I think we are here today because we have been given the opportunity, which we must take full advantage of, to decide how the money that comes out of our pockets can be best allocated to protect us and to serve us. I have been in this community, 46 or more years. I've raised 8 children here, a ton of grandchildren, even great-grandchildren I have. So I've been invested in this community. I've worked with a lot of different organizations in the community, and I've worked well with all, I don't know how many administrations that have been, over the city. But I need to be able to see, I think someone said some accountability, even if it comes as a review board or something, what has happened in the past and how can we make sure that what we're saying here, even if we write it down, that it's actually done. I remember a few years ago, I think Reverend Mario just mentioned that some of us were invited by Mayor David to a committee to look into diversifying the police department. And I remember being told by the police at that time that the police are sometimes overwhelmed by having to deal with calls concerning things like mental health issues or domestic disturbances that could probably be handled better by organizations that were more specifically trained to handle them. And I agree with that. And I think we have the opportunity to reallocate funds or reinvest funds in some of those areas. I also believe the police are like us, the rest of us humans, the clergy included. I mean, they have issues too. We need more transparency and accountability in reporting those issues, especially when they show up at work. We have to make sure that these issues are properly documented so that they can be properly dealt with. And because I think we need to know that the people that we are paying to protect and to serve us are fully capable of doing so. I've also been involved, I've been the coordinator for a National Night Out Against Drugs and Crime, which is every year in August, the first week in August, and that is a partnership with the police department. And it has been a great partnership, I think, but I think there's more that can be done. It could also serve as a time for periodic review of how have we done, like having a report card. We could have a community crime prevention guide that will put out that have all the pertinent information that people need to know. It could be on the city's website also, but also need to be put in written form for people who don't have computers. But I think we do have to have that transparency and that accountability and that ability to go back and review what has happened, see what we've done over the last year. What did we do well in? What did we not do well in? And how can we change them? So those are just some of the things that I think would help us to work better with the police force as we go forward. Thank you again.
Reverend Osby, thank you so much for being here, for sharing, and also like Reverend Williams for your time commitment and your work on the steering committee. I just want to thank everyone who signed up to participate in this outreach meeting tonight. As a reminder, all public input meetings are recorded. They'll be available online on the City of Binghamton's website under the 2021 Binghamton Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative page. The next public outreach meeting is for neighborhood groups, and that will take place this Thursday, February 4th at 6:30 p.m. Neighborhood groups can email bpdcollaborative@cityofbinghamton.com to sign up and participate in that meeting. So please, if you could help us get the word out about that, that would be appreciated. In addition, any resident who has thoughts, questions, or input in general can also email bpdcollaborative@cityofbinghamton.com at any point to submit written comments. And then, of course, there will be the open public comment meeting on February 18th at 6:30 p.m. That same email address can be used to register to speak, and that's open to any member of the public for comment. So I want to thank you again all tonight for your time, for the input that you shared, and for being a part of this effort. We appreciate it, and we look